What's up, guys? Dimes here. Welcome to another episode of Is It Worth It? Where I help you figure out if this game is worth it or not. We'll be discussing things like gameplay, graphics, level design, mechanics, and more. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So, I'm going to start this video off by saying I'm not the biggest Star Wars movie or TV show fan.
How dare you!
But I am a huge Star Wars video game fan. I've been a fan of these games since the Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace game on PS1, all the way up to EA's Jedi Survivor. With that said, it would be pretty obvious that I'd be excited for the release of Star Wars Outlaws. It's no secret that prior to the game launching, there was some controversy around the Star Wars game without a lightsaber, the gameplay, and the graphics even looking cheap.
Really? You think that's punchy? I think this is garbage.
With all that, I'm not going to take some YouTuber's rage bait. I'm going to play it myself. So I did just that. I played it.
This game sucks my spider balls! It's horrible!
From graphics to game design to gameplay, this is some of the worst stealth gameplay that I have ever seen. And sadly, the entire fucking game revolves around that. So let me explain. 90% of the missions you'll be getting into, they're going to send you to a location, usually something along the lines of a stronghold or an outpost, and they'll give you an objective, and the objective is something along the lines of find a material or find a room, with a secondary objective, don't get caught. And holy fuck do they mean it. If you are caught and they sound the alarm, you aren't going back just a few seconds to the last time you had a break. No. You are going all the way back to the start of the area you are in. That could mean 10 to 15 minutes. And if you absolutely suck at stealth like myself, that could mean 30 plus minutes. There were even a few times I just Alt F4'd during my playthrough because I was so aggravated by getting sent all the way to the back. I just didn't want to do it. I mean, holy shit. God forbid I try to shoot out a goddamn camera so it doesn't see me. If you try to disable a camera by shooting it, it's back to the start of the fucking level for you, buddy.
Gotcha, bitch!
It's actually such an annoyance. And you would think, if a game is built around stealth, you would have the tools and mechanics to support it. But instead, we're left playing heating and air conditioning simulator. All you really have, especially early on, is a stealth melee action to use when you're close to an enemy, a stun shot that takes several minutes to recharge, and your companion doggo Nyx to distract and attack the enemies, which the cute dog was probably one of the only things that I liked of my entire experience in Star Wars Outlaws. But if we think about games that revolve heavily around stealth, they at least give you an option to go loud, even if it makes things a hell of a lot harder. Look at The Last of Us, for example. At least if you decide to go loud, they give you a shiv to get the clickers off your back. In this, it's just an automatic game over, no questions. You just start over. But again, if your game is gonna be primarily stealth, at the very least, please make it so you have the actual tools to do stealth. I can't even begin to describe how bad it feels while playing this. This even persists in the side content as well. You can do a job for a faction to gain rep for that faction, or do odd jobs for people around the world, and it'll send you into another faction's sector to steal or plant evidence on that faction. And if you're caught, take a fucking guess what happens. Yep, sent right to the very start, just because you triggered an alarm. You can even completely lose out on a quest altogether if you fail it. And as someone who likes to complete all side quests, it just made exploring the side content and the faction system completely unappealing. Like, there's side missions that give you upgrades to your bike and your gadgets and your guns, but I was so turned off by the constant stealth missions, I didn't even want to explore much of the side content. even in the instances where you can use weapons, it just feels like a hassle. Kay, the main character, her primary weapon is her blast pistol. It's moddable with upgrades and different ammo types, like ion or plasma and charge, each doing different things. Ion affects shields, droids, and stuns enemies, but it's a burst weapon. Plasma is the standard damage for standard enemies. And charge is like an AoE shot used for multiple groups of enemies and large enemies. Then you have the infamous weapon pickups, which are much more powerful, like auto rifles and snipers, similar to something you would see in Halo with their power weapons. So obviously you'd say, well, just use the power weapons. I would say, hey, great idea, buddy. If not for the fact that every action you take, every move you make, you drop your fucking weapons. You want to climb up a ladder? Drop your weapon. You want to melee an enemy? Drop your weapon. You want to interact with something? Guess what? Drop your fucking weapon. Basically, leaving you with just your pistol. All of this feels like, I don't know, getting hot bacon grease dumped on your back.
Oh!
There's also this bootleg Red Dead Redemption Deadeye-like system that I hardly interacted with because it felt so bad. When Kay is getting pressured, she builds this adrenaline meter and can slow time and mark like 3 or 4 enemies and blast them down in quick succession. It sounds cool, but the animation for this is so weird and jarring that I just didn't want to even be bothered to use it. And it really just became an afterthought. Also, while riding your speedster, which is like your motorcycle used to traverse the open world, the only way you can shoot while riding on it when you're getting chased by enemies is the Deadeye mode, which also feels strange. Like it's 2024, we can't figure out how to shoot while riding a bike. Didn't GTA figure this out like 20 years ago? Anyway, moving on to the space exploration part of the game. This was just kind of sad, like girlfriend cheating on you levels of sad.
Bruh, get down. Get down.
Ubisoft, at the very least, is known for cluttering the map with bits and pieces of content. But apparently, they decided to leave that for on-planet only because off-planet space exploration is a joke. There's one of 3 things you'll be doing in space. First, every time you go into space, you'll come across an event of enemy ships fighting another faction and they're asking for your help. And to be honest, the space combat is mediocre. It's okay. It's not awful. 2, flying from point to point using your scanner, then pressing a button to collect floating treasure. And maybe you even get to shoot a box open to then press a button to collect your floating treasure. 3, flying to a planet to continue the story. Literally, that's it. And arguably, the space combat is the best combat the game has to fucking offer. I just don't understand why Ubisoft seems to be so detached from reality. Like, if your game sucks in one area, at least for the other parts of the game that feel somewhat decent, make some content for that. It really just doesn't make any sense at all. Also, I'm a big fan of anything flying in space, shooting things down, like something like Star Citizen or No Man's Sky. I just can't comprehend how both Star Wars Outlaw and even Starfield, which this game kind of feels like in a way, couldn't look at these games at the very least and try to make something worthwhile out in space. It just boggles my mind. And then we get into the graphics, and don't even get me started on the graphics. The pre-rendered CGI footage looks okay, it's passable. But for something pre-rendered in 2024, I would expect something much more high quality. Even with the pre-rendered footage, Kay, to me, just looks out of place. She doesn't give off vibe of badass scoundrel, rogue, and thief. More so the vibe of an anorexic, sick person. When it comes to the in-game cutscenes, the visuals look cheap, rotten, almost wood-like, if that makes any sense to you guys. Animations are clunky at best, when the characters talk, it's like they didn't even try to make the voices match up with the mouth animations. It's very distracting and takes away from the immersion aspect of the game. It just seems like they didn't give a rat's ass about the presentation of this game at all. Really, the only thing that saves this game at all are the environments. At least the levels are pleasant to look at, even if they aren't exactly fun to interact with. Earlier, I briefly spoke on the Syndicate system, but I think it's worthwhile to at least talking about a little bit. And like most things in this game, it's an absolute flaming bag of shit.
Call the fire department. This one's out of control.
So the way it works is there are 4 factions you can do jobs for and make decisions for in the main story that will influence the rep between factions. You do good for one, the other gets mad. The more you increase your level with the faction, the more perks and rewards you can get. Things like being able to enter factions' restricted areas, or getting access to better trades at their merchants, or just simply getting cosmetics. When I saw this, I was immediately intrigued by this. I was actually really excited to interact with the system. I thought, what a great idea. But the system was pretty much useless and held absolutely no weight. It was extremely easy to manipulate and get max rep for all factions. All you really have to do is just continuously spam quests for different factions, and eventually you can get it to the point where they're all maxed and nobody hates you. And then you have all the perks of everywhere. What I was hoping for, or at least expecting for, was a system where if I did something to a faction, they would absolutely hate me. And that would continue into the story. And I would have to go above and beyond to prove myself to get in their good graces. But no, you just do a couple dog shit stealth missions for every faction and they love you again. Also, you could have the absolute worst rep in the game, and in the main story, it holds no value. It's like the leader doesn't give a fuck that you robbed him, planted evidence on his gang, put his head in the toilet and gave him a swirly. He just is your best friend during the main story. It makes no sense. And it's like, why even add a karma system if it doesn't matter? Another huge gripe of mine was the quest marker system. Like, a lot of the times it would say, okay, go here on your compass. You'd go there, then you'd open your map, and you'd find this big radius over the mission objective, and it's like, okay, find X item or X person. And it left me wandering around for a while, and in a game where there's stealth, and that's the #1 mechanic, wandering around looking for something with enemies all over the place just feels bad. Especially when it's one of these big strongholds with dozens of enemies lurking around every corner. I'm not asking for a big red line that tells me exactly where to go, but a general location would be great, and not spanning 2-3 floors. Also, oftentimes the objective would be behind a locked door, sometimes even 3 or 4 locked doors. And when you get a locked door, you're met with these stupid ass rhythm games to open the door. And I'll be honest, at first I thought it was pretty enjoyable. It's a rhythm game, so it's like tapping and you're going beep, beep, bop. And you're doing it along with it. You're like, okay, bop, beep, bop. And timing the inputs was pretty fun. But again, it's just overused. Every location, you're doing this 3, 4, 5 times. It just feels bad. And then if you thought that was it, no, there's like another Wordle type mini game where you add symbols to a line in the correct order to be able to access the computer terminals. And this again is multiple times throughout a mission. All of this just ends up taking a lot away from the story and pacing of the game. But there are a few things that I did enjoy about the game. The actual worlds are beautiful. The different weather effects like rain and snow look great. We have to give Ubisoft some credit. They do make some of the most beautiful worlds in gaming, period. I also enjoyed driving around in the Speedster. This made traversing these worlds fun, for the most part. There's a skill tree or a tech tree like mechanic where you meet people in the world and they give you different abilities like a smoke grenade to throw at your feet if you're caught, or a booster pack for your bike, or help hacking terminals. But for me, I just wasn't enjoying the game early enough to want to interact with this stuff. I was in fear that it was going to make me do another stealth mission. And truly, the biggest upside to the game is Nick. We spoke about him before. He's this little alien space doggo companion that distracts, attacks, and fetches things for you during your missions. And he's adorable. He can trigger red barrel explosions, even open doors that are too far away to open. The only downside, and I mean, it's not really a downside, but it just kind of feels strange, is unless he's distracting enemies, he's basically invisible in the world. If you distract an enemy and then you don't kill the enemy right away, Nyx walks back to you. But the enemy doesn't seem to want to follow the dog where he's coming from or why. I don't know. I think there should be at least like a small penalty for using him. Like maybe the guards are aware. So basically there's just no penalty for using him at all. So as for the content and what the game offers, there's a 15 to 20 hour main story. There's a ton of side quests, intel quests. There's missions for upgrade paths for your character and your gadgets, hoverbike and spaceship. There's a vast open world for you to explore, a reputation system to interact with, a bunch of gambling side content like horse races and a Go Fish-like type game, and what feels like 100 of different accessibility options to make your game experience more enjoyable. I even found out later you can go into the accessibility options and turn off the mini games like lockpicking and terminal hacking. Oh, and one last thing I want to complain about for the people who might buy this game. When you start up the game for the first time, there's these black bars. It's not full screen, so you can change that in the visual options. But when you fill the screen, your FOV is way too close. So instead of putting the setting under FOV like a normal game, it's under view angle, and I think that's an accessibility. It took me forever to find. Anyway, I hope that helps some of you. In conclusion, the game overall has some great ideas. They're just executed so poorly. This leaving me feeling underwhelmed, to say the least. While I didn't think it was the worst title I've ever played, it certainly wasn't the best. So, to answer the question, is it worth the $60 price point or not? The answer is simply
No.
Now, let me say this. If you are like me and have absolutely no self-control and you have to play this game, I suggest buying Ubisoft Plus, then immediately canceling your subscription right after purchasing. You keep your subscription for 30 days and you won't get recharged as long as you cancel. But please, don't forget to cancel the sub so you're not getting charged every month, because they will continue to charge you, and that is their hope. They want you to forget that you bought a subscription. But if you can, my biggest suggestion, if you want to play this game, is wait for it to go on sale. It's really not worth more than like $20 or $30. And it shouldn't be too long till it's on sale. I don't know how well this game's going to do, but I can't imagine it's going to be great. So that's the end of my video. Thank you for coming. I hope you guys have a great day, great morning, and a great night. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!